I had exactly $2,713.46 in my checking account when my brother-in-law told me the family needed $180,000 from my late mother's foundation by Friday at 5 p.m., or the scholarship program she died building would collapse. I was still wearing a hospital wristband under my sweater from a minor surgery I'd tried to minimize because I hated being seen as fragile. He slid a sealed manila envelope across my kitchen table like it was a peace offering. Inside was a small brass key and a single printed line. Unit 4C, paid through March. No address, no name, just that. He smiled like he'd already won, and I felt my stomach do that quiet, cold drop that comes before you realize you're being played. He didn't know the envelope had been delivered to the wrong place first. He didn't know someone had photographed it. He didn't know that by Monday, an attorney would say the words that changed my life. We can file for an asset freeze today. Let me take you back. I live in Providence, Rhode Island, where old brick buildings pretend they're eternal and everyone seems to know your business before you do. My mother, Eleanor Hart, was the kind of woman who could make you feel steady just by standing near you. She ran a small estate planning firm for decades and spent her nights cooking for neighbors who didn't have anyone. When she died, she left her retirement money and a chunk of life insurance to create the Eleanor Hart Opportunity Fund, a scholarship and emergency grant program for first-generation college students in Rhode Island. I'm Mara Hart, 34, compliance director at a medical device company, and I inherited two things from my mother: her stubborn sense of fairness and her habit of thinking I could carry everything alone. My realistic flaw is simple. I'm calm to a fault. I can sit in a burning room and politely ask who forgot to turn off the stove. After my mom passed, I became the foundation's volunteer director because it felt wrong to outsource her last wish. We did everything clean: board meetings, minutes, disbursements, receipts. We used escrow for any large transfer because my mother had drilled it into me that money only stays noble if you treat it like it's dangerous. Assume it's radioactive, she used to say, and use gloves. My sister Tessa married Graham Klein 5 years ago. Graham is charming in that way that makes you trust him before you've checked your own wallet. He runs development for a regional real estate group, fundraisers, donor dinners, glossy brochures with words like revitalization and community. He also believed, very deeply, that anything connected to our family was, by extension, connected to him. Graham's motive wasn't love, it was control. He didn't want to steal the foundation outright. He wanted to bend it quietly until it served him. The first time I realized that, I was sitting across from him in a cafe on Thayer Street, and he said, very casually, "Your mom would want the fund to evolve. She'd want to be strategic." Strategic, in Graham's mouth, meant profitable. I said, "The fund isn't an investment vehicle." He smiled like I'd said something adorable. Everything is an investment vehicle. I should have put my phone face down right then and walked away. I didn't. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because that's what grieving people do. They hand out trust like they're trying to prove the world isn't as sharp as it suddenly feels. The foundation's board was small. My mother had chosen people she trusted: Reverend Naomi Pierce, who ran a youth program on the South Side, Dr. Alan Kim, a community college dean, and Julia Sanderson, a CPA with a calm voice and ruthless ethics. My mother had also named an independent attorney as counsel of record, Elliot Vance, because she believed family and money should never share a room without witnesses. Graham hated Elliot on sight. "Do we really need a lawyer involved in every decision?" he asked at one board meeting, in the tone of a man asking why we needed seatbelts. Elliot didn't blink. Yes. That's what my mother built, a system that assumed someone might try to cheat. Still, systems only work if the people inside them don't get tired. And I was tired. The year my mother died, I became the kind of person who answered emails from a hospital bed. I worked through grief like it was a debt collector. And then, 6 months before the envelope, I had surgery. Routine, outpatient, nothing dramatic. But my recovery was longer than expected. I kept telling everyone I was fine. I kept telling myself I was fine. The night before the betrayal, I slept 3 hours. That Friday morning, I was sipping lukewarm tea at my kitchen table when Tessa called. "Mara," she said, breathy, like she'd been crying. "Graham's coming over. Please just hear him out." "I'm not approving anything without a board vote," I said. I know. Just, please." When the doorbell rang, I stood slowly, one hand braced against the counter because my abdomen still felt like it had been stitched with impatience. Graham walked in carrying a bakery box and the sort of smile you see on billboards for life insurance. "Thought you could use something sweet," he said. He set down pastries like props, then sat across from me and leaned forward. "Mara, I'm going to be blunt," he said. "The fund is in trouble." I felt my shoulders tighten. "It isn't." He slid a folder toward me. "You don't see the whole picture. You're too close. You're emotional." I almost laughed because it was such a cheap move. He had no idea how hard I'd worked to be unemotional. I opened the folder. There were spreadsheets, beautifully formatted with tidy columns, the kind of document that makes lies look organized. At the bottom, a line in bold, shortfall, $180,000. He said, "If you miss this, you lose everything." The way he said it wasn't cruel. That was the most frightening part. It was practiced compassion. I tapped the paper. "Where did this come from?" "Our accountant," he said quickly. "It's complicated. Some pledges fell through. A donor backed out. We've got students counting on us." "This isn't how we handle a shortfall," I said. "We reduce grants. We do an emergency appeal. We don't drain reserves." He nodded like he'd expected me to be stubborn. "The reserves are precisely what we should use. Your mom built them for moments like this." "My mom built them so a kid wouldn't have to choose between rent and tuition," I said. "Not so you can—" "So I can what?" he cut in, still smiling. "Keep the program alive?" Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, sealed, like it was evidence in a courtroom. "This came to our house," he said. "Addressed to you. I figured it was important." He slid it over. I opened it. Inside was that brass key and the printed line, Unit 4C, paid through March. I looked up. "What is this?" Graham's eyes were bright. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. But I do know one thing. If someone finds out you've been hiding anything at all, this fund could be audited. Public trust could vanish overnight. Scholarship donors are skittish. You know that." There it was. Not a threat. A suggestion. A soft knife. "I don't have anything to hide," I said, though my pulse had climbed into my throat. He spread his hands. "Then there's no problem. We handle the shortfall, keep everything stable, and you can look into whatever that is later." I stared at the key. My mother had taught me to recognize leverage when it was placed gently in front of me. He was using my exhaustion against me. I said, "Bring this to the board. We vote." Graham's smile thinned. "A board vote takes time." "Then we take time," I said. His voice stayed pleasant. "Mara, Friday at 5. He stood, leaving the pastries untouched, and walked to the door like he was leaving a meeting, not my kitchen. At the threshold, he turned back and said, "You don't want to be the reason your mother's legacy fails." Then he was gone. I sat down slowly. My hands were steady, but my breathing wasn't. I put the key back in the envelope and set it beside my mug. Then I did something I rarely do. I called my mother's lawyer. Elliot Vance answered on the second ring. "Mara." "Elliot," I said. "I think someone is trying to force the foundation to move money quickly." Silence. Then, "Tell me exactly what was said." I did. When I finished, Elliot said, "Do not authorize any transfer today, not $1. I'm going to ask Julia to pull the bank activity and the ledger. We need to confirm whether this shortfall is real." "I already looked," I said. "It isn't." "Then someone created a narrative," he said. "Narratives are useful. They justify theft." My stomach tightened around the word theft. Elliot continued, "And Mara, About that key, don't confront anyone. Not yet. I wasn't going to, I said, though part of me wanted to drive to my sister's house and demand answers. Elliot said, "Good, because if we do this right, it won't be loud. It will be clean." I let out a breath. "Okay." He paused. "How are you feeling physically?" "Fine," I lied. "Your voice says otherwise," he said. "Sit down, drink water, and check your front door camera." What? "Just do it," he said. I opened my phone and pulled up the camera feed. The delivery from the day before was saved. A courier had dropped an envelope at my door. Except the courier had looked confused, checked a label, and then, after a moment, walked down my hallway and slipped the same envelope under the wrong neighbor's door before correcting himself and returning to mine. My neighbor, Mrs. Sokoloff, a retired nurse who could diagnose a lie from across a room, had apparently picked it up first. She must have realized it wasn't hers and placed it back at my door. But the camera had caught something else too. As the courier walked away, a man I didn't recognize stepped into frame, lingered near my door, and then left. Elliot's voice was quiet in my ear. "Screenshot that clip." My throat went dry. "Why?" "Because someone wanted that envelope to arrive," he said. "And someone else wanted to confirm it did." That afternoon, Julia Sanderson called me from her office. "Mara," she said, "I pulled the last 6 months of activity. There's no legitimate shortfall." "Then the spreadsheet is fake," I said. "Not just fake," Julia said. "It's designed to look like a donor withdrew a pledge, but the pledge never existed." A pause. Then Julia added, "There's something else. 2 small transfers, $9,800 each, went out 3 months ago, labeled Program Consulting, approved with your digital signature." My blood turned cold. "I didn't approve that." "I know," she said, "because you were on medical leave that week, and you sent me an email saying you wouldn't touch any approvals until you were back." I stared at the wall like it might explain how my name had been used. Julia said, "This could be forgery. If someone used your credentials, we're looking at a breach." My voice came out thin. "Can you trace where the money went?" "Already started," she said. "But here's the problem. The vendor is an LLC, a shell name." My mother's words floated up. "Assume it's radioactive." Julia continued, "Elliot asked me to meet him in an hour. He said to bring everything." I said, "I'll be there." When I stood up, my body reminded me I wasn't fully healed. I grabbed my coat and the manila envelope, and I drove to Elliot's office with the radio off. Elliot's law office sat above a bookstore, the kind with creaky stairs and a bell that makes you feel like you're entering a place where secrets are filed alphabetically. Julia was already there, laptop open, a stack of printed bank statements beside her like a shield. Elliot waited until I sat before he spoke. "Mara," he said, "your mother included a clause in the Foundation's bylaws. She called it the Canary Clause." I blinked. "A what?" Julia leaned forward. "A Canary Clause is a provision that triggers an automatic response if certain red flags appear, like a canary in a coal mine." Elliot nodded. "If any disbursement is made using the director's credentials while the director is documented as incapacitated, medical leave, hospitalization, anything, we are obligated to investigate, and we are permitted to seek emergency relief." My fingers tightened around the envelope. "Emergency relief meaning?" "Meaning we can go to court," Elliot said, "and ask for a temporary restraining order preventing further transfers, and potentially an asset freeze on accounts linked to the fraudulent recipient." My throat tightened. Court meant public. Public meant my mother's foundation dragged into the kind of story donors run from. Elliot watched my face. "Mara," he said, "your mother wrote this clause because she anticipated someone might try exactly this." I swallowed. "Graham." Elliot didn't say his name. He didn't have to. Julia turned her laptop toward me. "The LLC that received the 2 transfers is called Northlight Program Consulting, LLC." I stared at the name. It sounded like something you'd see on a motivational poster. Julia clicked again. It was formed 8 months ago. Registered agent is a mailbox service. Can you find who owns it? I asked. Julia's expression tightened. Ownership is hidden behind another entity. Elliot said, shell within a shell. That's common when someone wants to make tracing difficult. It doesn't make it impossible. I took out the brass key and placed it on Elliot's desk. And this? I asked. Elliot looked at it like it was exactly what he'd expected. That's the pressure point. I slid the printed slip across the desk. Unit 4C, paid through March. Julia frowned. That looks like a storage unit receipt? My pulse jumped. Why would I have a storage unit? Elliot didn't answer immediately. He said, Mara, did your mother ever mention a safety deposit box? A storage space? Anything like that? No, I said. She told me everything. Then I heard my own lie. My mother had told me many things, but not everything. Not the things she might have thought would burden me. Elliot said, we need to find where Unit 4C is. I exhaled slowly. How? Julia said. We start with what we have. That slip is printed from a standard facility system. There might be subtle identifiers, font, spacing, the line break style. I stared at her. You can tell that? Julia's mouth twitched. I used to audit storage companies. Don't ask. Elliot added, we can also check your credit report for any facility accounts, and we can subpoena records if needed. Subpoena. The word landed heavy. Elliot leaned in. Mara, here's what matters right now. Graham wants you to move $180,000. He gave you a deadline. That's coercion, and it's tied to this mystery key. If we can prove he's using undisclosed information to force a transfer, we strengthen our case. I swallowed. So, what do I do? Elliot's voice lowered. You let him think you're considering it. You buy us time, and you don't tell your sister yet. That last part hurt more than anything else, but I nodded. On Saturday morning, my phone rang. Graham. I let it ring once longer than I wanted to, then answered. Mara, he said warmly. How are you feeling? Still sore? There it was again. The concern as a disguise. I'm managing, I said. I'm looking at options. Good, he said. Because this has to be handled cleanly. The donors, I know, I cut in gently. I know, I'll have an answer Monday. Silence. Then his voice sharpened just a fraction. Monday is too late. I'm not moving money without documentation, I said. If you want speed, give me clarity. He exhaled, like I was the difficult one. Fine, I'll send more detail. Please do, I said, and my hand shook as I ended the call. I put the phone down and stared at my kitchen table, the same table where my mother had taught me to balance a checkbook when I was 13. She'd made it feel like power. Now the table felt like a courtroom bench. That evening, I drove to my sister's house for dinner because she'd begged me. I told myself I was going to see her, not him. But Graham was there, of course, wearing an apron like he was the kind of man who didn't manipulate charitable foundations. Tessa hugged me too hard. I hate that you're stressed, she whispered. I looked at her and saw what I hadn't wanted to admit. She was tired too. Marriage to Graham was a slow leak. She'd been patching it for years. Dinner was polite. Graham talked about community partnerships. Tessa talked about her students. She taught 3rd grade. I chewed and nodded and kept my voice even. Then Graham did his first escalation. He said lightly, Mara, we should talk about your mother's files. I held my fork still. My mother's files? Yes, he said. Her old firm records. I've been helping Tessa organize the house, and we found some boxes in the basement. Some of them are labeled. Tessa blinked. Graham, I told you. It's fine, Graham said, and smiled at me. Your mom kept a lot of documents. Some of them involve irrevocable trusts, asset shielding, that kind of thing. Might be relevant. My chest tightened. My mother had built trusts for clients, not for us. Or so I thought. Graham continued. I just think transparency would be wise. If donors ever questioned the foundation's governance, having everything accounted for, I set my fork down gently. Are you suggesting my mother did something improper? Graham's smile stayed. Not at all. I'm suggesting you might not know everything, and if you don't know everything, you might accidentally make a choice that exposes you. There it was, the second knife. I looked at Tessa. Her eyes were shiny, confused, trapped. I said quietly, "Send me photos of the labels." Graham's smile widened. Of course. That night, I cried in my car in the driveway before I drove away. Not because I was scared of Graham, because I was scared of what he'd done to my sister's sense of reality. On Sunday morning, Julia called. "I found something," she said. My stomach clenched. "What?" "The LLC," she said. "Northlight is receiving funds, but then it's sending them out in smaller payments. Classic layering." "Where?" I asked. "A vendor account connected to a property management group," she said. "Guess who their development director is?" My throat tightened. "Graham." Julia paused. "It gets worse. The payments line up with storage facility rent." I stared at the envelope on my counter. The brass key felt heavier now, like it had grown overnight. Julia said, "I can't confirm the facility yet, but I can confirm this. Someone is using foundation money to maintain an off-the-books storage unit." I sat down slowly. What would he keep in a storage unit? Julia's voice turned careful. Evidence, or leverage, or both. That afternoon, Elliot called with a name. "Unit 4C belongs to a facility in Cranston," he said. "A place called Harbor Lock Storage." "How do you know?" I asked. "Your credit report," he said. "An inquiry was made last year, not by you, but in your name." My mouth went dry. "So someone opened it using my identity." "Yes," Elliot said. "That is identity fraud, and that's criminal." I closed my eyes. My mother's foundation, her last act, had been used like a bank card. Elliot said, "I'm filing an emergency motion tomorrow morning. Julia will sign an affidavit summarizing the banking irregularities. You will sign one too, stating you did not authorize those transfers." "Affidavit," I repeated, feeling the weight of it. "A sworn statement," Elliot said, "under penalty of perjury. It makes the court move faster." I swallowed. "And what about the storage unit?" Elliot's voice stayed calm. "We don't break in. We do this legally. We can petition for an order allowing access, or we can coordinate with law enforcement once we have the restraining order. We keep it clean." My hands were cold. "Okay." Elliot paused, then said the line I needed to hear. "This isn't revenge. This is justice." On Monday morning, I walked into the courthouse in a plain coat, hair pulled back, my hospital wristband finally cut off, but the pale mark still there. Elliot met me on the steps. Inside, everything smelled like paper and old decisions. We filed for a temporary restraining order to prevent any further transfers from the foundation's accounts and to preserve records. Elliot explained everything to me as we waited. "A restraining order in this context isn't about personal safety," he said. "It's about stopping financial harm. The judge can order the bank to block outgoing transfers above a certain threshold and to preserve logs." "And an asset freeze?" I asked. "If we can tie the recipient accounts to fraud," he said, "the court can freeze them temporarily so money can't vanish." Julia arrived with her affidavit already notarized. "Notarized signature matters," she murmured to me. "It tells the court this isn't casual. It's sworn. It's real." We were ushered into a small courtroom. The judge was a woman with tired eyes and a voice that carried without effort. Elliot spoke in clean, simple terms. He didn't dramatize. He didn't insult Graham. He just laid out the timeline. My surgery, the unauthorized transfers, the fake shortfall narrative, the coercive deadline, the identity-based storage account. He handed the judge printed exhibits and a USB drive containing metadata logs from the Foundation's accounting software. When the judge asked what the USB was, Julia answered calmly, The accounting platform records metadata, she said. Login time, IP address, device type. It shows approvals were made from a device not associated with Ms. Hart while she was documented as on medical leave. The judge looked at me. Ms. Hart, did you authorize these transfers? My throat tightened, but I said clearly, "No, Your Honor." The judge nodded once. Then she looked down at the papers, then up again. "The court grants the temporary restraining order," she said. The courtroom went silent. It wasn't dramatic silence. It was the kind that happens when adults realize consequences have entered the room. Elliot didn't smile. He just exhaled and thanked the court. Outside, on the courthouse steps, my phone lit up with Graham's name. I didn't answer. I put the phone face down. Then I waited. By noon, Graham showed up at my office building. Not in a rage, in a suit, carrying a folder, performing concern. The receptionist buzzed me. "There's a Mr. Klein here. He says it's urgent." I looked at Julia, who had come to sit with me. She lifted her eyebrows. I said, "Send him to conference room B." When Graham walked in, his smile was still there, but his eyes had changed. They weren't warm anymore. They were calculating. "Mara," he said softly, "what is this?" He waved the court order like it was a misunderstanding. I didn't stand. I didn't offer water. I didn't do anything that would give him the comfort of normalcy. I said, "You created a fake shortfall." His smile flickered. "I did no such thing." "You used my identity to open a storage unit," I said. He leaned forward. "You don't know that." "I know," I said, and slid Julia's printed metadata summary across the table. He didn't touch it. His jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said quietly. "You made one." He tried a different angle, voice turning gentle again. "Mara, you're recovering. You're stressed. You're letting that lawyer scare you."
Evelyn sat without responding, placing her folder on the table like a weight. "This is Ms. Price," the attorney said, clearly annoyed. You requested," Evelyn interrupted, "and I declined." Grant's smile tightened. "We're here to resolve this like adults," Grant said. Evelyn slid a page across the table. "This is the TRO," she said. "The transfer is halted." The attorney's eyes flicked over it. Grant's face flushed. "This is temporary," he snapped. "We'll fix it." Evelyn nodded calmly. "Perhaps," she said. "But first, we'll discuss why you filed an LLC listing yourself as the sole member while claiming it was for family." Grant blinked. "You looked that up?" he demanded, like evidence was unfair. "Yes," Evelyn said. "That's what lawyers do." Grant turned to his attorney, irritated. The attorney cleared his throat. "There may have been a misunderstanding," he said. Evelyn's gaze sharpened. "Misunderstanding implies accident," she said. "This looks like planning." She opened her folder and slid out another sheet. "This is a notice from Harborview," she said. "They have been instructed not to execute any power of attorney or property documents without my presence." Grant's eyes narrowed. "You went to Harborview?" he said, voice low. "Yes," I replied quietly. "I saw Mom." His smile returned, thin, dangerous. "You always have to make it dramatic," he said. I didn't respond. Evelyn turned a page. "And this," she said, "is the name of the notary on your deed." The attorney leaned forward. "I don't know what you're implying," he said stiffly. Evelyn's voice stayed calm. "I'm implying we will subpoena the notary's journal and the title company's identity verification logs," she said. "And if the signature is forged or the notarization is defective, we will pursue a claim for fraud and file a complaint with the Secretary of State." Grant scoffed. "You can't prove anything," he said. Evelyn didn't flinch. "Not yet," she said. She turned to me. "Elena," she said quietly, "tell him about the email." I described it. Spam folder, secure link, wrong phone number. Grant shrugged. "Tech stuff," he said. "Glitches happen." Evelyn nodded. "True," she said. "Which is why we brought someone." A woman stepped into the room, mid-50s, wearing a blazer and carrying a slim case. "This is Dr. Lila Hammond," Evelyn said, "forensic document examiner." Grant's attorney stiffened. "Absolutely not," he said. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Then we'll do it through discovery," she replied. "In court, under oath." The room quieted. Grant leaned back, eyes cold. "You want to drag our mother through court?" he asked me, voice dripping with accusation. I swallowed. My flaw, the desire to avoid being the bad guy, twitched inside me. But then I pictured my mother in that sunlit room at Harbor View, hands folded like she was waiting to be allowed to live. "No," I said softly. "You dragged her. I'm stopping you." Grant's nostrils flared. "Fine," he snapped. "If you want war, Elena," Evelyn cut in. "Mr. Cruz," she said, voice like steel under velvet. "We aren't here for war. We're here for compliance. Return the property to the trust, dissolve the LLC, and stop isolating your mother." Grant laughed, bitter. "And what do I get?" he demanded. Evelyn's eyes held his. "You get to avoid criminal exposure," she said simply. Grant's face hardened. He stood abruptly, chair scraping. "This meeting's over," he said. He walked out. His attorney followed, face tight, not even apologizing. We sat in the aftermath, the harbor sparkling outside like nothing had changed. I exhaled shakily. "He's not going to stop," I said. Evelyn nodded once. "No," she replied, "which means we move faster." That afternoon, the first anonymous envelope arrived at my apartment. No return address, just my name, printed in block letters. Inside was a single folded page and a small key. The page read, "Check the USB. You're missing the second folder." My hands went cold. "The USB," I whispered. The one taped inside the packet at the beginning. The one I'd shoved into my pocket and forgotten because everything else had been on fire. I dug it out of my drawer where I'd left it like an unfinished thought. I plugged it into my laptop. 2 folders appeared. One was labeled Docs. The other was hidden, grayed out until I clicked Show Hidden Files. Folder 2, Harper. My breath caught. Harper was the name of the title company's escrow officer listed on the email. I clicked. Inside were audio files, short clips. My throat tightened. I hit play. Grant's voice filled my kitchen, smug and close, like he was sitting across from me. "Just get her to sign it. She's tired. She won't read it. Tell her Evelyn is handling it." Then another clip. "Notary's fine. I paid her. She's done this before." My stomach turned. Then the last clip, quieter. "Once it's recorded, Elena can't do anything. She'll panic and fold. She always folds." I sat back, heart pounding. I didn't know who recorded it or how, but I knew what it was. Evidence. And then I noticed the file properties. Creation dates, device IDs, location metadata. I wasn't an IT specialist, but I wasn't helpless with a computer either. My job had taught me to trace what mattered. The recordings weren't from a phone. They were from a digital voice recorder, one used in offices, not pockets, and the metadata pointed to a device registered to Harborview Assisted Living. I stared at the screen. A staff member had recorded him, or someone had left a recorder running when he thought he was alone. I called Evelyn immediately. She listened in silence as I played a clip over speakerphone. When it ended, she didn't speak for a moment. Then she said quietly, "The second folder changed everything." The next week moved like a legal chess game. Evelyn filed a motion for expedited discovery, subpoenas for the notary's journal, the title company's verification logs, Harborview's visitor logs, and any surveillance footage from the day my mother signed. Grant responded with aggression. He filed his own petition claiming my mother was incapacitated and accusing Evelyn of overreach. It was a classic strategy: muddy the waters, make everyone doubt, turn the responsible person into the villain. The court scheduled a hearing for 2 weeks out. Evelyn looked at me after reading the notice. "He's going to try to appoint a guardian," she said. "If he succeeds, He'll control her decisions. My chest tightened. What do we do? I asked. We prove his pattern, Evelyn said, and we protect your mother's voice. She arranged for an independent geriatric specialist to evaluate my mother, not for humiliation, but for clarity. The doctor met with my mother privately and documented what mattered. She had mild cognitive issues consistent with stress and medication changes, but she was not incompetent. She understood her assets and her wishes when not pressured. Evelyn explained it to me in plain language. Capacity isn't all or nothing, she said. A person can have vulnerability and still have legal agency. The question is whether someone exploited a vulnerable moment. I nodded. And the trust? I asked. The trust was designed for this, Evelyn said. Your mother built a system so her tired moments wouldn't be weaponized. Grant's escalation came a few days later. Public, calculated. Every spring, Charleston's Harbor Lights Foundation hosted a charity gala at the Old Marlowe Hotel, a place where money mingled with manners. My mother's bookkeeping business had donated services for years. Evelyn sat on one of the foundation's legal advisory committees. Grant had never cared about the foundation until he realized it was a stage. He showed up to the gala with cameras, local society bloggers, a photographer, people who loved a scandal wrapped in philanthropy. I only knew because Mrs. Davenport called me. Elena, she said, voice tight. Your brother is telling people your mother is declining and that you're contesting her wishes. He's making you look like a greedy daughter. My stomach clenched. Where's Mom? I asked. She's there, Mrs. Davenport said, and she looks small. I hung up and stood in my living room, my stitches mostly healed but my chest tight. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be watched. My flaw, avoidance, pressed on me like a hand. Then I pictured my mother, small, under chandeliers, while my brother narrated her life. I put on a simple black dress and drove downtown with Evelyn. When we arrived, the Marlowe's ballroom glowed with candlelight and coastal opulence. Linen, crystal, soft jazz. People turned to look, not because I was important, but because I was part of a story they'd already started telling themselves. Grant stood near the stage with a microphone, smiling like a benefactor. My mother sat at a table near the front, hands folded in her lap. She looked up when she saw me, eyes widening with relief and fear. Grant's smile tightened. He leaned toward the mic. Tonight, he said warmly, we celebrate community, and we also celebrate family. Some of us have had to step up recently to care for those we love. A few people nodded sympathetically. Evelyn's expression stayed neutral. She leaned in toward me. Don't react, she murmured. Watch. Grant continued. My mother has given so much, he said. And as she transitions to the next stage of life, it's important her affairs are handled with dignity. My mother's eyes darted to me. I kept my face calm, even as something hot rose in my throat. Grant looked across the room as if searching for me, then landed on me deliberately. And sometimes, he added gently, there are misunderstandings. People who think they know best. A few heads turned toward us. My hand tightened around my clutch. Evelyn squeezed my arm once. Wait, she whispered. Then the room flickered. A low hum, then darkness. A storm had been rolling in over the harbor all evening. Thick clouds, wind gusts that rattled the hotel's old windows. I'd ignored it. Now, lightning cracked somewhere close and the ballroom lights went out. A collective gasp rose. Emergency lights snapped on dimly, bathing everything in gray-blue. People murmured, phones lighting up like fireflies. The event coordinator rushed toward the stage. Grant's voice rose, still polite, but strained. It's fine, he called. Everyone stay calm. The coordinator spoke into a radio, frantic. Evelyn's eyes sharpened. There's our location twist, she murmured, almost to herself. What? I whispered. The Marlowe's backup generator is unreliable, she said. They'll move the program. Sure enough, within minutes, staff began guiding people through side doors into a smaller conference hall lit by a stable generator. The crowd funneled, confused and chatty, the perfect chaos to disrupt Grant's control of the stage. As we moved, I felt someone brush my elbow. A woman in a staff uniform slipped a folded card into my hand and kept walking without looking at me. My breath caught. I opened it under the cover of dim light. Ask Evelyn about the notary. Check her commission. H. Harper, the escrow officer. My pulse quickened. I leaned toward Evelyn. Harper just warned us, I whispered, showing her the card. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, then she nodded slightly. Good, she said. She's scared. That means there's more. In the smaller hall, Grant tried to regain control. He stepped up again, smiling too hard. Just a little Charleston weather, he joked. Laughter, relieved. He raised the mic. As I was saying, Evelyn stepped forward. Grant blinked, thrown. Evelyn, he said, tone falsely warm, this isn't... Evelyn didn't ask permission. She didn't need to. Her presence carried authority because she wasn't performing. Ladies and gentlemen, she said calmly into the mic, I'm sorry to interrupt. I serve as counsel to the Harbor Lights Foundation, and I also serve as successor trustee for Marisol Cruz's irrevocable trust. A hush settled, the kind that happens when people sense something real is cutting through the polite fog. Grant's face tightened. Evelyn continued. There have been statements tonight implying Marisol's property affairs are being handled with dignity, she said. I want to be clear. A court has issued an order temporarily restraining any transfer of Miss Cruz's home due to concerns about fraud. A ripple of murmurs. Grant's smile froze. Evelyn's voice stayed even. We will not litigate details at a charity gala, she said, but we will not allow misinformation. Miss Cruz is here. She is safe, and she is not a prop. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Grant stepped forward, voice sharp. You can't do this, he hissed, forgetting the mic was still live. Evelyn turned slightly, looking at him with something close to pity. Grant, she said quietly, still audible, you did this to yourself. He lunged for the mic, but the coordinator stepped between them, panicked. The room buzzed, phones lifted, people whispered. Grant tried to laugh it off, but the laugh cracked. And then, because life loves timing, the hotel's audio system glitched and replayed a snippet of the mic feed from moments earlier. Grant's hissed line, amplified, You can't do this. It sounded like a confession. The humiliation wasn't cruelty. It was consequence. I walked to my mother and sat beside her, taking her hand. I'm here, I whispered. She squeezed back like she'd been holding her breath for days. We left before the auction resumed. Outside, rain hit the pavement in hard sheets, the storm finally breaking open. In the car, Evelyn was quiet. Then she said, Now we go to court and make it official. The hearing came faster than I expected. Charleston County Probate Court wasn't grand. It was functional. Wood benches, muted carpet, the quiet tension of people whose family issues had become public record. Grant arrived in a tailored suit, looking every inch the dutiful son. His attorney carried a thick binder like intimidation could be measured in inches. My mother arrived with me and Evelyn. She wore a soft cardigan and held a small folder of her own. Documents she'd insisted on carrying because she wanted to feel like herself again. The judge entered. We stood. We sat. The clerk called the case. Grant's attorney began with smooth language, concerns about my mother's capacity, allegations of interference, the need for Grant to manage affairs. Then Evelyn stood. She didn't speak like a performer. She spoke like someone placing truth into the record. She submitted the LLC filings showing Grant as sole owner. She submitted the title company email logs, showing the verification code sent to a number not belonging to my mother. She submitted Harborview's visitor logs showing Grant's repeated visits during the signing period. Then she requested permission to submit additional evidence under seal due to privacy concerns. The judge nodded. Evelyn handed the clerk a drive. My stomach tightened. The USB. Grant's attorney frowned. What is this? He demanded. Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. Audio recordings, she said, along with metadata establishing their creation time and source device. Grant shifted in his chair, a tiny movement that betrayed him. The judge looked over her glasses. Mr. Cruz, she said, do you dispute the authenticity of these recordings? Grant's attorney stood quickly. We object, he said. Foundation, chain of custody. Evelyn nodded. Which is why, she said calmly, we also subpoenaed the notary's journal and commission record, and the title company's escrow file, including internal notes. She turned to the judge. The notary's commission number on the deed, she said, belongs to a notary whose commission expired 8 months before the document was purportedly notarized. Grant's attorney's face tightened. And, Evelyn added, the notary's journal contains no entry for that date, that property, or Marisol Cruz. The judge's eyes narrowed. The courtroom went silent. Grant's confident posture faltered. Evelyn continued, voice steady. We are not asking the court to punish Mr. Cruz emotionally, she said. We are asking the court to protect Ms. Cruz legally. She gestured toward my mother. My client created an irrevocable trust precisely to prevent this kind of coercion, she said. It includes a canary clause. Mr. Cruz's actions, creating a self-owned LLC, attempting to transfer trust property, misrepresenting counsel approval, and presenting a defective notarization, trigger forfeiture. Grant's attorney began to speak, but the judge lifted a hand. Ms. Cruz, the judge said, turning to my mother, do you wish to transfer your home out of your trust to your son's company? My mother's voice trembled, but it was clear. No, she said. I did not understand what I signed. I thought I was signing paperwork for my doctor. Grant's face flushed. The judge turned back to him. Mr. Cruz, she said, you attempted to move a protected asset out of a trust without proper authority. Do you understand the seriousness of that? Grant opened his mouth. His attorney touched his arm sharply, warning him not to speak. Grant swallowed. The judge looked at Evelyn. I am granting a permanent injunction preventing any transfer of the Rutledge Avenue property out of the trust without trustee authorization, she said. I am also ordering dissolution of the LLC insofar as it relates to any claim over this property, and I am issuing an order restricting Mr. Cruz from presenting any power of attorney documents for Ms. Cruz without independent counsel present. Grant's shoulders sagged. And, the judge added, given the evidence of attempted fraud, I am authorizing a referral to the appropriate state authorities for investigation. Additionally, I am granting an asset freeze on any proceeds or accounts connected to the attempted transfer pending further review. Grant's attorney's face went pale. Grant looked like the floor had shifted under him. It wasn't dramatic in the way movies promise. It was worse for him. It was official. Outside the courtroom, Grant caught my arm, lightly, like he thought he still had permission. Elena, he said, voice strained, you didn't have to do all this. I looked at his hand on my sleeve. Then I looked at his face, the entitlement, the shock, the sudden realization that charm doesn't work on documents. I removed his hand gently. I didn't, I said quietly. You did. My mother stepped forward then, surprising me. Her voice was soft but firm. Grant, she said, you don't get to call this love. Grant's eyes flashed with anger and shame. You're letting her turn you against me, he snapped, looking at my mother. My mother's mouth tightened. I'm not against you, she said. I'm finally for myself. Grant's face crumpled for a second, and I saw the little boy inside him who'd learned that taking was easier than asking. Then it hardened again. He stormed off, his attorney following, murmuring frantic legal advice. Evelyn exhaled beside me. That's the order, she said. Now we enforce it. In the weeks that followed, the consequences rolled out in the way consequences do, Quietly, inevitably. The LLC filings were amended. The property remained in the trust. Harborview changed its internal policies after Evelyn's letter. The title company fired the escrow officer's supervisor who'd ignored red flags. Harper, the escrow officer, sent Evelyn a formal statement and affidavit describing pressure from Grant to move quickly and not ask questions. Evelyn explained it to me in a coffee shop one afternoon, sliding the affidavit across the table. "This is why systems matter," she said. "People inside them can be scared, but paper gives them courage." "What about the recordings?" I asked. Evelyn sipped her coffee. "Harper left a recorder in the file room after Grant cornered her," she said. "She didn't trust what he was doing, and she wanted insurance." I stared at her. "She did that for us?" I asked. Evelyn shrugged. "Maybe she did it for herself," she said. "Sometimes that's enough." It was a small kindness, anonymous until it wasn't. Grant tried to salvage his image, of course. He told extended family he was misunderstood. He blamed me. He hinted that Evelyn was power-hungry. But the court order was public record. And in Charleston's polished circles, one thing matters more than charm: reputation backed by documents. The foundation quietly removed Grant from its volunteer roster. People stopped returning his calls. A bank declined his loan application when the asset freeze showed up in background checks. He didn't crumble because we destroyed him. He crumbled because he'd built his life on leverage, and the system finally took it away. My mother moved back into her house the day the injunction became final. We opened the windows, aired out the stale tension that had settled into the walls. She stood on the porch and touched her basil plant, now revived with Mrs. Davenport's care. "I thought I was losing this," she whispered. I stood beside her. "You didn't," I said. She looked at me. "I'm sorry," she said, "for believing him when he said you didn't want me." My throat tightened. "Ma," I said, "he used your fear. That's not your fault." She nodded, then said something that made me blink. "I want to update the trust," she said. Evelyn had mentioned it was possible, even with an irrevocable trust, through limited mechanisms and court approval if it served the trust's purpose. It required careful legal work, but it could be done. "What do you want to change?" I asked. My mother's gaze steadied. "I want you as co-trustee with Evelyn," she said. "Not because you're responsible, because you're honest." I swallowed hard. "Okay," I said. That was the closure I didn't know I needed. Not praise, not apology, but trust as an action. 1 year later, the house on Rutledge Avenue looks the way it always should have. Lived in, safe, not waiting to be taken. My mother's health isn't perfect, but it's stable. She has a caregiver 3 mornings a week, paid for by the trust the way she intended, and she still insists on balancing her own checkbook because it makes her feel like herself. I'm doing better too. I left the construction firm and started a small consulting practice helping local small businesses tighten contracts and protect themselves from exactly this kind of family help. It's not flashy, it's real, and I don't apologize for it. Grant lives across town now in a rented condo he can barely afford. He's not in jail. No one hunted him down. The state investigation is ongoing, and his name appears on records he can't charm his way out of. He's learning, slowly, that adulthood isn't a performance. It's accountability. Sometimes people ask if we reconciled. The answer is complicated and quiet. My mother speaks to him occasionally, in controlled, supervised ways, because she's a mother and because boundaries can coexist with love. I do not. Not because I hate him. Because I finally respect myself enough to stop negotiating with someone who only understands taking. If you've ever been the dependable one, the one who keeps the peace while someone else rewrites the rules, remember this. Peace that costs your dignity isn't peace. It's surrender. And if you're watching this and thinking, I'm in something like that right now, tell me in the comments. What's the first boundary you wish you'd set sooner? And if you want more stories where justice comes from evidence, process, and earned power, not cruelty, hit subscribe.